Howdy, 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 all you cool cats and kittens. Guess what? We're here on the farm, not using tools. We are Stardew Valley Tools Aren't Real Edition, and we're beating as much of Stardew Valley as we can without using tools. Berkeley, where are we at right now?
Well, same place we've been. We've finished the community center a while ago, and now Jared is working on making friends with everyone, giving out just the best gifts you can imagine. Just like apricots, cherries, I think mostly those two. Uh, and just trying to make friends with all the villagers so we can get full hearts with everyone. And we're also working on just scaling up the farm, making as much money as we can so that we can buy some super cool buildings from the wizard.
That's right. They might not be worth it, but it's worth it for the victory, right?
Well, so for 10 million gold, we can get the golden clock, which will make it so that weeds don't grow on our farm anymore.
That is really worth it.
Um, yeah, that'll help us like clear out a lot more land and have that be worth it. Because if we were to clear out land right now with bombs, it would be gone in a couple weeks.
Oh yeah, that reminds me. We
Covered in
planted some
weeds.
mahogany down here last time, so
Oh yeah,
that's exciting. That's been one of our big bottlenecks, is
yeah.
getting
Getting
that
hardwood.
hardwood planted and cultivated.
But Barma, great call in the chat. Says the wizard or the whiz. I sincerely apologize for
The
not saying the whiz.
whiz.
I'm gonna go with the whiz from now on.
Oh, Berkeley, I've got a rare seed here. I'm gonna put it in the
Oh,
greenhouse for you, in the greenhouse chest. I
sounds
figure
great.
that's probably the safest place to try to grow it.
Okay. And I want to make sure that I've got enough apricots to put in like preserves jars, and I want to make sure you have enough apricots to
I
give
have
out to
60
people.
right now.
Okay. I have 85. Sounds like we both have plenty for our
We
respective
we
activities.
do.
Um, well, let me know if you ever need more.
Berkeley, have I ever told you why I don't like plums?
You have actually never once told me why you don't like plums, believe it
Well,
or not.
buckle up, kids. It's story time. When I was growing up, we had a. Uh, Sorry, before I begin the story, let me interrupt myself to ask: are we selling truffles? Or are we
Yeah, we're
saving
selling
them? We're
truffles.
selling
We
them.
don't have any oil presses.
Okay.
You can give them as gifts to Leah as well. She loves them.
Ah, okay. So I lived in a house in Bellevue, Washington that had a bunch of fruit trees. And I don't remember if there were more types than just plums, but what I remember is plums. And if you've ever gone and picked fruit off of a tree at like a you pick place, you know that there's a lot of fruit on a tree. And I think we had 4 plum trees. And every year there would be more plums than we could eat and more plums
Mm.
than we had the time to pick. So they would fall to the ground and rot in a carpet of fermenting plum. And it
Mm-hmm.
smelled awful. And I would have to go out and scoop the rotting plum into buckets to get rid of it. Because, of course, rotting fruit attracts all sorts of insects. So I don't like plums now because of the smell of my youth. And
Yeah.
if I was cool, I would probably just get over myself. But it's a fun story, at least.
If I was cool, I would probably just get over myself. Title of my autobiography. Then it can act as double proof that I'm not cool. Yeah,
Anyways,
I had a similar experience with apricots. I lived in northern Utah for a couple of years, and it felt like just all of Ogden and all of Logan had that thing with apricots. Just every house had an apricot tree that was making more than the people wanted, and so it was all over the city.
you know, especially in Utah, where that probably comes from, the popcorn popping song. And everybody's
That's
like, oh, wouldn't it be
probably
so
an
fun to have
influence.
an apricot tree for real?
I think it also could have gone the other way. Like I think maybe
Mm,
apricots are just better for Utah's climate than other fruits because it's a desert. And
That's
then,
much more realistic.
well, I don't know about much more.
So,
Um, well, so maybe there's hope for you because this year I've got an apricot tree in my yard that made just the right number of apricots. And my wife made this delicious apricot jam with it, and I have
ooh,
been loving it. So I think I'm starting to heal from my 2 summers of apricot trauma.
speaking of,
Maybe you too can find peace.
yeah, well, hopefully. But before I find peace, I want to hear about a book that you read recently. You said it had an interesting take on trauma, and apricot trauma reminded me of that.
Oh yeah. Um yeah. But Barma says popcorn trees are real edition. Peter. That'll be our spin-off series. Yeah, I read an interesting book that had an interesting take on trauma, and that was Slaughterhouse 5. Have you heard of this one, Jared?
I have
Know
heard
anything
the
about it?
title before. I know nothing about it.
Okay. I'm just going to give a little disclaimer. I feel a little weird talking about it because when I was in high school, someone described it to me, probably one of my English teachers, and it did not sound appealing at all. And now that I've read the book, I love it, but also the description was perfectly accurate. So now I'm kind of at a loss for how to market it.
Yeah.
Um, so Slaughterhouse 5 is about a man who is quote unquote unstuck from time. It's kind of like a Benjamin Button thing going on, except he's like living his whole life out of order. Um, One day he'll be fighting in World War II, and then he'll close his eyes, and suddenly he's like a doctor in the 1960s. And he'll close his eyes again, and he has been kidnapped by aliens and is in a zoo on their planet.
Dang. That's a
It's
big
mostly those three
change.
things that he bounces around, but he's like going back and forth throughout his life, and he doesn't have control over it. Um, so it kind of focuses on like how he reacts to that, and the way that he reacts to it is by just becoming pretty blasé about everything in life. He's seen his own death many times. He lived through the bombing of Dresden,
Oh,
which I
dang.
actually thought maybe you could give some more context on.
Yeah. So,
um,
do you want me to do that now or wait?
yeah,
Do
tell us
now.
what that was.
All right. So, during World War II, the Allies, well, everybody pretty much was bombing everybody, but the Allies' advantage in manufacturing quantity allowed us to conduct some pretty massive bombing campaigns that were, in premise, targeted towards destroying manufacturing and ending the war sooner by eliminating the enemy's ability to produce material that they could fight with. Now, Dresden stands out. They did definitely bomb manufacturing infrastructure, but Dresden is pretty well known because it was the scene of a pretty horrific casualty count in the civilian population as well. And one thing that I don't think a lot of people talk about, especially when teaching younger, like high school age or younger kids about World War II, is that we didn't do just explosive bombing. We did a lot of incendiary bombing as well. And I'm not sure if what happened in Dresden was the result of incendiary bombing or traditional explosive bombing, but a huge firestorm took place, and even people who were sheltering in bomb shelters cooked alive because of the intense heat. And when firestorms get to a certain size, they become self-sustaining, and so it just was a pretty horrific man-made, man-inflicted disaster for the civilian population of that city.
And I know some people consider it a war crime because that was like a primarily civilian city, not like a very good military target. Is that, do you think that's a consensus or is that like a fringe opinion?
I wouldn't say it's a fringe opinion. I think it depends on who you ask. I haven't done a lot of research into the moral underpinnings of Dresden as a target.
Mm.
So I'm not sure that I could comment with authority on that. But my personal take is that with the technology they had at the time, civilian casualties were pretty much a given in any kind of bombing. But I don't know their strategy or what they were actually trying to hit. If they were trying to bomb the city itself instead of just the military infrastructure, then they shouldn't have done that, and it was wrong, and probably fairly considered a war crime, certainly by the definition, if you're targeting civilians.
Mm.
Today, we criticize Russia for similar behavior, although they have much, in theory, much more precise tools and intelligence. So, if we want to hold Russia to that standard, on some level, I think it's important that we look at the past without glorifying what it was. And I would say that it's fair to consider Dresden a war crime through those criteria.
Mm. Cool. Thanks for that context. I shouldn't say cool. It was a very sad and dark time in history.
Cool.
Cool. So with that context, we've got a main character who's just living through these horrific things. He sees his own death. He sees being kidnapped by aliens. He sees living through this bombing. And because of it, he's just kind of decided that like everything that ever happens was always going to happen. And everything that happens will always have happened. And so like if you want to interpret it in a good way, he's very zen about life. He's like just very stoic and steady. Or you could interpret it as he just has severe depression throughout his whole life. So that's an interesting part of it. The whole fact that it's framed as like a time travel story just reminded me a lot about trauma and how people who go through horrendous things often end up like reliving that, and it comes out in unexpected ways throughout the rest of their life. I don't know if that was the intended takeaway, but that's something I took from it. Yeah, the writing was really, really good. It's by Kurt Vonnegut, who I learned later actually also survived the Battle of Dresden. The book is way more autobiographical than you would have thought at first blush. He was an American prisoner of war in Germany at the time the bombing happened, so I got to see it firsthand. Anyway, it's a weird book to describe because there's aliens and time travel and bombing, but it's just a really thoughtful, contemplative, beautiful book that I recommend, and it's a quick read, which is always nice.
Berkeley, the way that you're describing it kind of makes me think of the movie Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Mm.
Would you say that there are similarities in the plot and the lessons to be learned there? Do you think the
Yeah,
feel was
absolutely.
similar?
Yeah, I think both books really ask the question of like, I mean, one, free will. If they ask it in very different ways. Like if I think that movie Everything Ever All at Once asks like if anything is possible, then do any decisions really matter because everything happens everywhere all at once. Whereas Slaughterhouse-Five asks like, do we really have free will if the things that happen were always going to happen? So yeah, I think they both talk about free will and then how you cope with that like existential crisis that they evoke.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I used to think about that a lot when I was younger. Not younger, when I was like 24, 25. Thought a lot about, you know, could things have happened differently or would they always work out the way they did in my life?
Mm.
You know, was I always going to make the choices I made? And I didn't really come to a conclusion at the time, but looking back, my personal take is that it doesn't matter because you can't know whether that is the case or not without being able to go back, which we can't do, right? So maybe for the character in that book, the outcome is different and it does matter because they're able to go back. But for myself, you know, I am where I am, moving through time in a linear fashion. So whether I would always make the same choice or I could have changed my behavior and done something else and had some different outcome, this is where I am. And I like where I am. And if I don't like where I am, I can make choices to change where I am. You know, be in the moment, I guess.
Yeah, well said.
So you said you've been reading like a fiend. What else has been on deck for you in the literary world?
Yeah, I read a Brandon Sanderson book, Yumi and the Nightmare Painter. Um, that was just a very stunning, lovely book. I think it's my favorite Brandon Sanderson book now.
Wow.
Um, so we've talked about this before, but during the pandemic, Mr. Sanderson chose to cope with the isolation and the boredom by writing 5 extra novels in one year. And this year, 4 of those are getting published. So this was the third of these like surprise books that he sent out. Um, it's a classic body swap story where this uh, young man and young woman they just wake up and they have swapped bodies, and the other one is there like as a ghost, um, and they're freaking out, and hijinks ensue, I guess. Um, it had such great world building, like all Brandon Sanderson books do. It had a great mystery, lots of twists right up until the last couple pages, and then just characters that you really get to love. I think that was the part that made it stand out from other books by Sanderson that I've read. Just you spend the whole time focusing on these 2 characters and really get to love them and want the best for them and understand them. Whereas most of his books are a lot more like epic in scale, and you don't really get that intimate connection.
Yeah. Yeah, it's that's cool to see. I don't know if you would say that he's discovering his voice or a different voice in his writing, but yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, I think he's got like these long running series that are going to take decades to complete, and I think he maybe feels a little bit trapped by that, maybe a little limited. And so I think these like surprise novels have been a chance for him to really just explore and try new things, and I love it.
Berkeley, where would George be if he's not at home and his wife is?
He could be at the doctor.
Ah, the
That's the only other
doctor.
one I can think of. Does anyone else know?
He is not at the doctor. The doctor's not even at the doctor.
What?
Yeah.
Hmm.
Maybe at like a service in the chapel. Yeah, there it is.
Oh, good call. Nice. Thanks, Megan, in the chat. Have you been reading anything, Jared?
I I have not been reading anything new. I have reread the latest book in the Red Rising series once again.
Mm.
I have started listening to the Inheritance cycle, which is the most famous book from that series is Aragon. It's a little bit of fantasy, dragons, magic. It was written by I want to say a 14-year-old, and it kind of shows. But it's comforting. It's something I read for the first time in 5th grade, and then I've come back to periodically. And just has the first book especially has a lot of kind of adventure and discovery in it, and so I find that enjoyable. I would liken it in some ways to The Hobbit, but definitely not as much of a masterpiece as The Hobbit is.
Mm.
So, yeah, nothing new. But I did order a textbook. So engineering textbooks are expensive. All textbooks are usually expensive, but I found engineering textbooks to be especially pricey.
Mm-hmm.
And all of my classes had required textbooks this semester.
Ugh.
So yeah, had to shell out some cash. And I bought what claimed to be a new hardcover copy of a power system flow analysis book.
Mm-hmm.
And when I got it, somebody had taken a softcover book, cut it apart. And I think the original book was also a bootleg because the paper is super, super thin and like pretty much transparent. It's terrible quality. There's not a proper binding on the book, and they cut the cover off of whatever book that they cannibalized and then glued it onto a hardcover binding from a different book.
Ugh.
So I definitely got ripped off. But I need the book now, so I can't afford to send it back and wait for a new book to come out. So
Oh, jeez.
so I am making do. It's mostly usable, but the binding is so bad that there's a lot of tables in the back that you use to look up different properties of transmission lines, and those are unusable. So I've had to find a bootleg PDF copy online, which is ironically a better solution, anyways, but technically stealing. So, you know, try not to do it too much when I can help it. But
Well, it seems like you have paid plenty, and
yeah,
you deserve access to the content you paid for, even if
even if I have
it's
to
not
do
going
it
to the publisher.
a different way. Yep.
Yeah,
Look at you scavenging. You're going to get a new scavenging level so quickly.
I sure hope so. I've been thinking that for a while, though, and
What the
so far it
heck
has
is
not been
this?
the case.
What's going on with this creature?
That's Big Raccoon.
Ah, big raccoon want fish. Big raccoon does not want the kind of fish I have. Well, big raccoon, dislike. Firm dislike.
Canceled.
Berkeley, I am obsessed with audio stuff, which you know. You got to
Mm,
witness me repeatedly make terrible music in GarageBand in high school and then insist on playing it loudly around everybody at
I thought it was super
the
impressive.
wrong time. I'm glad it worked for you because cringe, 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 cringe now. But yeah, younger me didn't know better. Maybe younger me deserves a little bit more mercy there. I'm coming to you today through this wonderful setup that you can see here. It's a huge windscreen attached to a microphone. But that's not the cool part. Not that it's huge, but it's a particularly effective windscreen, which makes me like it because I like good kit. It costs $30, I believe. It's called the Shure A81WS. And the microphone is a $15 knockoff of the Shure SM57, which is a famous workhorse microphone, not typically used for vocals, but hopefully everyone listening to this can tell it sounds pretty good. It's definitely usable for spoken word. The windscreen is so effective that I can blow into the microphone and it doesn't distort the diaphragm. All you hear is normal breath sound, which is a weird phrase I never thought I'd have to say. But I'm very jazzed about this. I love all sorts of audio equipment, but one thing that really bothers me about the world of audio equipment is that a lot of people are flexing on each other over how much their gear costs. And a lot
Mm,
of people are overpaying for stuff that either isn't very good or doesn't suit their needs because it was marketed deceptively, or is super expensive. So this microphone is the Pile PD Mic 78, and it's a great solution if you're looking for a general use mic. Now you will need something to plug it into, an audio interface. You can pick up audio interfaces that work with this type of microphone, I think as cheaply as $20 now. Some of the Behringer single channel interfaces are pretty inexpensive, and they definitely work. They're not going to win you an Emmy probably, or a Grammy, I think is the right thing to say there.
Definitely gonna not gonna earn you a Tony.
No, they will
You can
definitely
say
not
that for
earn you
sure.
a Tony. But they're definitely good enough for the average user, and you can even record pretty decent music on it if you're looking for that. So I was super happy with this setup. My brother bought me this windscreen and a proper Shure SM57, which I'm not using right now because some microphones have what's called a transformer in it that uses a special property of magnetics to exchange voltage for current and make things sound louder. We don't need to get into the details, but this clone sounds very similar, but it doesn't have that transformer. And that means that it's immune to the electromagnetic interference from the power line just above my room that connects to my apartment building. So even
Mm.
though the other mic is technically better, this actually sounds a lot better because it is able to reject that noise by nature of not having something that can pick it up. So, you know, even though something looks better on paper, is technically better, if it's not the right solution for your situation, it's not the right solution. Anyways, that's my plug. Don't buy super expensive stuff if you don't need to. You can get great sound from just regular gear or knockoff gear, which is what I'm doing.
Yeah, thanks for that plug and that info. Yeah, that's crazy how cheap that setup is. But my life would be better if all my coworkers were using whatever setup you're using right now.
Yeah, that's I feel you. I have been watching a lot of software feature demos for this power transmission software I'm using in my senior project, and every single one of them is recorded with somebody breathing into their headset microphone. And oh boy, do I hate it. I just can't. And it's also, it's recorded with the quality of like a Zoom call recording, where it's, even if the audio was quality to begin with, it's still got that weird muffled compression sound from lowering the actual like bit rate quality of the audio to make it a small file size, and that bothers me too. So yeah, I working remote has so many upsides, but that is one big downside that definitely would really bother me.
Yeah, I just felt like the timing was great that you introduced me to the world of podcasting at around the same time the pandemic started. And so just this whole time that I've been working and doing school remote, I feel like I had a pretty good setup thanks to you.
Yeah,
And
I mean, you did your
now
own
that you've
research too.
now that you've taught me everything, I feel like everyone should just know how easy it is. And
I I feel the same way, man. It's not too tough to get into. You just have to have somebody who's not going to lie to you. So don't trust a marketer, really is the answer.
mm,
But go online, listen to reviews, find people who aren't doing sponsored reviews. If you're interested in the audio world, especially microphones, there's a YouTube channel called Podcastage by a guy named, his first name's Andrew. I don't remember his last name. And that, in my opinion, is one of the best non-technical review channels that I've seen. Does all sorts of microphones, lots of different recording interfaces, from super budget to super high end, and spends a lot of time, excuse me, trying to deliver an unbiased product. And I think it works. I've bought some gear based on reviews I've seen there, and I've avoided buying gear based on reviews I've seen on there. And Bandrew hasn't led me wrong yet. So check out Podcastage if you want to find somebody to trust in getting into the audio world. It's a little bit of a gear snob, so you know, you don't have to buy into that mentality, but in terms of the sound quality and just good quality recommendation, I would trust 99% of what he puts out.
Nice.
And that concludes our review of a reviewer.
5 stars.
Berkeley, you played Red Dead Redemption 2 recently.
I played a little bit of it. Yes.
Did you beat the storyline? The main
No.
story? No.
No, not at
Okay.
all.
What caused you to move on? Just other stuff happening in your life and new games coming out?
It was so all the reviews that I had seen of it just talked about what a beautiful game it is, and that is undeniably true. It's a very good looking game, but it was just too slow paced for me. Um, yeah, I because I have a kid, sometimes my gaming sessions aren't as long as I would like them to be. So sometimes I'll sit down and have 45 minutes to play a game. And there were like 2 times in a row where I had that 45 minutes and I sat down and played Red Dead Redemption 2 and spent the entire time riding my horse to one location, finding out one piece of information, and then riding my horse back to the other location. And
Yeah,
I can't do that.
that
Uh,
sounds pretty annoying.
and I was confused by the whole like first act. There's like a 4 hour long tutorial that feels
Man.
like multiple missions, but it's really a tutorial. That kind of put me on edge. I could have tried harder to get into it. I only played like 6-ish hours, and I feel like you need 10 to get into a game like that. But I wasn't feeling it, and I've decided not to force myself to enjoy games because there's so many games out there and
Yeah,
not enough time.
yeah, true. Near infinite supply of different games out there. Yeah,
Hmm.
I should have heeded your warning, not warning necessarily, but the lesson you learned. I bought it recently. It went on sale for $20 or $17 or something, and I was like, oh, well, I've heard good things. It's cheap. Might as well pick it up and see what it's like. And I have played 111 minutes so far, and it has all been tutorial. And it's not like a open world. Here's how you do this. As you discover different mechanics for yourself, it's very much this is a mechanic. This is a whole mission based on the mechanic. You're going to do it. And there's one way out, one way back. Just very railroady. There's also a real railroad involved in this part of the tutorial, but the figurative railroad is much, much more annoying to me. I want a game that has the story. I like the story, it's fascinating, but with a shorter tutorial that just tells me what the controls are to do a thing when I try to do a thing. Like if I press the A button and I don't know what it does, fine, tell me what it does. Or if I'm near something I can climb, show a prompt. That's fine. Please don't make me sit through 2 hours of here's the thing, now go do it.
Hmm. Yeah.
Also, the slow way. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, it's a shame. I was really excited for it. I'd heard great things, and just wasn't right for me. Maybe I'll try it again later.
Part of me wonders though if they're doing things so slowly because they want to show because it's the cowboy life, right? There's not technology. Everything was slower back then. And now that we live in the modern age where things are fast, maybe they tried to show us how things were slow and it went over my head. Maybe that's giving them too much credit. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think it felt that deliberate to me. I think it was more like we have put all of our time and money into beautiful scenery, and you are going to look at the scenery.
Yeah.
There were even times where you could like press V to go into widescreen mode, which I have never seen in a game because like there was just nothing happening. You were just riding your horse, and so you could
Hold
click a
it.
button and then it switched it to a movie instead of a game.
Yep. Berkeley, I have entered a cutscene with who I think is Abigail, and we are
Uh
now
huh.
playing a video game together, I guess.
Game in a game. Nice. She'll like you more if you do well. So try to do well, I guess, but no pressure.
I died. Let's try this again. All right.
Abigail is my favorite NPC to date. I know you're not as into the romance in Stardew as I am, but seen this cutscene many a time because of that.
What is the perk?
The perk of Abigail,
Yeah.
it's just fun. I like that she wants to be an adventurer. Um, Man, I don't know how to put it into words.
What does she give you if you end up on the farm together? Is what I'm asking, I guess.
Oh, yeah, she will gift you bombs occasionally. So that was like
Oh
a
yeah.
plan D for how to get our first bombs if we weren't able to do it the way that we did, which was getting jade and bringing it to the desert trader. Um, yeah,
Berkeley, what time is it in the real game world?
it is 8:10.
Okay, I'm worried that I'm gonna pass out in here if I don't die fast enough.
I'm trying to see where you're at. I think you're good.
Ah, we completed it. Okay.
Nice.
All right. Well. Oh, and now she's in a fight with her mom. Uh. They didn't know I was here, apparently. Oh boy. Well, now I'm inside Pierre's way after closing time. And I'm handing out gifts. Oh boy. Here you go, Pierre. Hey, wake up. I can't give a gift while someone's sleeping. I guess that makes sense.
That has been It's one of my favorite things about like Skyrim and Fallout and games like that. When you have to finish a quest and you go to talk to someone in their bed and they just stand up immediately and talk to you.
And they're not like, whoa, how'd you get here? Or whatever.
Like they tried, they did the very slow getting out of bed animation, but then they're just immediately to their normal personality.
Yeah. Not to mention they sleep in their regular day clothes.
That is true, yeah.
Which tells me that either Bethesda is run by freaks who've never seen pajamas, or something canonically has happened in all Bethesda produced games that made pajamas go extinct.
I think maybe both things are true. Speaking of Bethesda games, have you been following StarCraft at all?
I
Wait, did I
I
say that wrong? Starfield?
Starfield, and
Oh,
I
geez, that was embarrassing.
have looked at it. It seems uh maybe a little bit shallow in terms of what's really going on in the game, but very
Hmm.
beautiful in its own way.
I finally got level 8 foraging. Two
Nice.
levels to go. Yeah, I was excited for it. After seeing some of the gameplay and some of the reviews, I'm a little less excited. I'll probably get it eventually when it goes on sale, but have
Yeah.
not tried it yet.
In like 8 years when it's on sale for $20.
I was thinking more like this coming Black Friday, but
Uh, okay. I was just imagining another Red Dead Redemption 2 experience, except it's space themed.
hmm.
Emily has sent me cloth. Thanks, Emily. Mayor Lewis says, Dear Jared, tomorrow we're all getting together for the flower dance. If you can find a partner, you might even want to participate in the dance yourself. There's a little clearing beyond the forest west of town where we hold the dance. Arrive between 9 a.m. and 2 p.m. if you're interested. Alrighty then. Is the flower dance necessary for perfection?
No.
Okay. Then I vote we skip it.
Okay, let's do it.
Also, we have a big mushroom growing by your old house.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Um,
Can you
yeah, I
get
don't know what's up
mushroom
with
wood?
that. I think that you can put a tapper on it and it will give you a mushroom
Huh.
every day or something like that.
That's kind of weird. That means that it's dripping whole mushroom out of itself.
Yeah, I don't like thinking about that.
That's what my. Sorry, this is probably lame for people who haven't taken physics courses, but the speed limit of the universe, as far as we can tell, is the speed of light. And as you get closer and closer to light speed, time elsewhere slows down. And the way that we model it right now, or the way that we understand it, as I was taught in my physics class, when you reach light speed, time ceases to exist, which means that from the perspective of the photon, it's everywhere all the time. And
Oh.
I asked my physics professor about that, and he gave the response you just gave, which is, I don't like thinking about that. So, anyways, I thought that was funny. Not really relevant, sorry.
No, you're good.
All right. You know what I haven't done? I have not gone out to the desert to check on our
Our
seedlings out
trees out
there.
there.
Yeah,
Okay.
I need to make
The
some
ones
more
here look like
bombs,
they're doing
though.
good. I think that was a good call to plant some on the farm instead of doing them all in the desert.
Yeah, they seem to like the rain, which
Mm.
makes a lot of sense.
These trees are so picky in this game. You need like controlled climate.
Why don't you just grow wherever I want?
Come
Well,
on.
they actually do if you don't want them to. Just like real plants.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. We've
I
we've talked about my dislike of yard work, but Berkeley, you've been doing some other type of work outside.
yeah, well, let me complain about weeds first. I've got morning glory all over my lawn, doing my best to keep up with it, but I found out I've been using the wrong kind of like herbicides. I
Ah,
thought just like regular weed and feed would be good for them, but need something special for the morning glory.
can you? This is a weird question, but I've seen people kill weeds by pouring boiling water on them.
Mm,
Do you think that that's actually effective? I've only ever seen it done on video.
I have done that for like grass in driveway cracks and had a pretty good experience. Um, I've heard that that doesn't work as well for morning glory specifically. I've been researching that a lot lately.
Interesting.
Um, and yeah, it like kills the surface well, but not the roots. Also, you can't do that on grass because it will also kill the grass. Anyway, yeah, my other thing is I tore out my deck. When we bought this house, the house inspector was like, "You should know that legally this deck is tall enough that it should have a fence around it or like a guardrail," and it didn't, so it wasn't up to code. We thought that was the only issue, but it was not. In the 2 years that we've lived here, it fell apart quite substantially. It was sagging a ton and just looking all around bad. I don't know how old it was when we moved in. By the speed at which it's deteriorated, I feel like it couldn't have been that old. Um, but anyway, it was falling apart. So I bought a crowbar and started taking it apart plank by plank. and found out that there was like no support in the middle. On one side of the house, it was screwed into a 2x4 that was screwed into the house siding, which was not very strong. And then on the other side, it had like good posts, but in the middle, no support. There's actually one spot where there was just a pile of loose wood propping up the deck.
Yikes.
I don't know if someone was just trying to store their wood there or if that was meant as like a stability thing. But yeah, all around, not
Zero
a
out
great
of
deck.
10 would not recommend the contractor that built that deck.
Yep.
If you know who they are, let us know so we can shame them publicly.
Yeah, please tell me. The good news was that there was a beautiful cement patio underneath that needed a good amount of sweeping. There was like a solid inch of dirt on top of it, and then like a loose inch of dirt on top of that. But once I got all swept up, it was lovely. It kind of felt like tearing up a carpet and finding hardwood floor underneath.
Just a great surprise because that means you don't have to go to all the work of digging out space for a concrete patio or building another deck yourself,
Mm-hmm.
which is
Yeah,
tough. Probably. Probably.
probably.
Never built a deck. So who knows? But I would guess it's tough. All right. So good news out here. Our trees are growing. We've got a couple little saplings here. So they're on their
Nice.
way. It's just very slow.
Well, watched pot and all that. We just need to forget that the desert exists.
Yeah. Wow, these tappers aren't even full. That's crazy. Huh.
I think that's been like the most surprisingly difficult part about a no tools run is like having space to do things like farm for sap. Because I thought that the desert was going to be a great solution to that because there's no weeds there. But clearly not as good as I thought.
Concerned Ape watches this stream and patched it to make it harder for us. That's conspiracy theory thinking right there, just in case you needed an example. Assuming that you're important enough to be targeted is a pretty paranoid point of view.
Hmm. So the legal definition of conspiracy involves like there has to be multiple people involved.
Ah, true.
But with conspiracy theories, I feel like we've kind of decoupled that from the actual definition of conspiracy.
You know, maybe the line between just delusional and conspiracy theory is blurred in my own mind because I've seen so many people who are doing both at the same time.
Mm,
I don't know, but you're definitely right. They're not the same thing. And so maybe we need to normalize using delusional instead of conspiracy theory.
normalize calling other people delusional. You heard it
That's
here first,
that's
folks.
right. I mean, sorry, is that what you heard? Because that's delusional.
That's a conspiracy theory.
All right, who do I need to be friends with today? Linus, he's already at full hearts though. Pam, uh, yeah, I could go find Pam. She probably goes and hangs out at the bar in the evenings, I think.
Yeah.
All right, let's get out there. Berkeley, you tried brewing a brewed drink at home.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about what it was and what you found out?
Yeah. So my boss at work gave a little presentation on how to do some like home brewing, and I was inspired and got some of the equipment he recommended, and I made a drink called tapache. which is like a Mexican pineapple drink that is kind of similar to kombucha. Um, so it's got like it uses fermentation, but it's not considered an alcoholic drink. Like there's technically a little bit of alcohol in it, but you wouldn't like brand it as alcoholic. Anyway, yeah, it's got pineapple and brown sugar and cloves and cinnamon in it. Just a very good taste. I had a lot of people tell me that it tasted kind of like wassail. If
Hmm.
you have had that,
Yeah.
um, yeah, it was super tasty and super easy to do. You just needed a big glass jar. Um, I got this cool filter to put on top of it that uses water to allow gas to escape, but not bugs to get in, uh, which is important for fermentation because it like produces some gas. And I think the most fascinating part about it to me is how the fermentation is just it uses like the natural bacteria that is already on the pineapple skin. Um, I didn't realize like how many sources in the world there are for things similar to yeast, but like grapes grow it naturally, which is probably why wine exists. Um, Pineapple has it. I don't know where else you can get it, but like, yeah, the world just wants to ferment. It's nature's way.
Yeah. Well, I think biology is super fascinating, especially microbiology, because there's so many different organisms all filling little niches that I wouldn't have even imagined were possible. Like there's probably a unique bacteria that lives on pineapple naturally. Just weird stuff like that. It never ceases to surprise.
I don't know how true this is. I should fact check this, but I have read that if you just take like a swab of a New York City subway on any given day, you're probably going to find a bacteria that does not have a name because just because of how the New York subway is.
Yeah, I was gonna say New York subway is a breeding ground for all sorts of unmentionable bacteria,
Yeah,
probably.
new species every day. But Barma says, Book Rick, I contain multitudes. What's that about? I can Google it since I'm waiting for Jared to come to bed. The microbes within us and a grander view of life. Oh, that sounds fascinating.
I'll have to check it out. The
Neat.
multitude within us.
I remember that existential crisis of finding out that like most of the cells in your body are bacteria and you would not exist without the things that aren't you inside of you. It really pushes your understanding of what you are.
What really tripped me out in my college biology course is that white blood cells are capable of autonomously moving around and hunting for like targets. And
Hmm.
they're not controlled really by the nervous system necessarily. I don't want to share false information. It's been 4.5 years since I was in that class. But just learning about how white blood cells behave, it feels almost like its own separate little organism that our body makes, and then they do their thing. They just don't reproduce. Which I don't know. It's
Yeah.
just crazy. I'll have to go read more about it so I can provide more detail next time. But yeah, neat stuff.
But Barma says basically you're a walking meat bag hosting more bacterial cells than our own body cells.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whew.
All right.
Um, there. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, it's that time of day again. So
Is it that time already? Oh my
I
goodness, I
know
didn't even notice.
it's crazy.
Well, Jared, if you just open up your inventory, you can see how much money we've made so far, and you will see that next time we are going to hit 2 million total
Total earnings. That's
total earnings.
pretty crazy.
Not current earnings, unfortunately, but
We've got 25% of that in cash on hand. It's
yeah,
pretty impressive.
we're doing good. Up and to the right, as my coworkers always say.
Well, that's awesome. The more money we make, the more problems we can solve for ourselves.
Is that what mo money, mo problems means?
Yes,
Mo,
definitely.
mo problems, in parentheses, solved.
That's right. All right, Berkeley, where can the fine people find us?
Well, if you are viewing this on YouTube, you can go to the description of this video and find our link tree. If you're watching this on Twitch, you can go to the About section of our page and find a link to Linktree. And either of those are going to have links to our Instagram, our Twitch, our YouTube, and our Discord server. Our Discord is a fun place to hang out and share recommendations. And I have not yet made a channel for the Daily Wordle, but I will do that right as soon as we hang up here. Yeah, so come on, come and hang out with us, all those places.
It'll be fun, we promise.
Love to hear from you.
All right. Well, hopefully we'll catch you next week for some more perfection or maybe something else. I don't know. It depends on, I guess, how we're feeling and how the day counts out. All right. Bye.
Bye.